Thank you to Motion VFX for sponsoring this video. A storm has been brewing. Lightning is about to strike and change the entire smartphone landscape forever. Okay, so maybe a little too dramatic, not an actual storm, but like, you get what I mean. The new leader of the pack comes with a complicated family history. But the OnePlus Nord is finally here to become the mid-range smartphone to beat. Also, if you want to know how we created that awesome intro using Motion VFX, stay tuned to the end of the video. If we've seen anything good at all happen in 2020, it's smartphone makers racing to the middle. Apple jumped back in with their brand new iPhone SE, Samsung with their A series, something Google will eventually do, allegedly. But OnePlus probably doesn't need much of an introduction to this category. If you remember, they were the ones that started this campaign against the flagships as the anti-flagship with no sacrifices for incredible value. If you remember, the original OnePlus One came in at $299 with almost no sacrifices on performance. Now, OnePlus' path has changed a little bit. They've gone more upstream with their current flagship phones, the OnePlus 8 Pro and the OnePlus 8, but they are returning to their roots, returning to what gave them their name and their reputation with the OnePlus Nord. It's a global phone. Pricing is going to vary depending on the region you are, so we'll link to all that information down below. But OnePlus is sticking with the formula that they perfected with their first gen phone. It's bringing the latest specs, some of the best performance you can get into a phone of an affordable package. So while this is definitely not our full review, stay tuned for that. Let me tell you what it's like to use the OnePlus Nord and also how it stacks up to, I think, some of its cheap competition. So this design it's unmistakably OnePlus. It's a beautiful looking design they perfected over the last couple years. It looks very much in the vein of the OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 8 Pro. So we've got what they're calling blue marble, which looks really nice to my eyes. There's a more muted gray version if you'd like, but blue marble for pop of color looks pretty good. So from a display standpoint, it's 6.4 inches. It is AMOLED. It's 2400 by 1080, and it's a 90 hertz display, and it's a really good looking 90 hertz display. There's an optical in-screen fingerprint reader, and a first on a OnePlus phone actually has dual front-facing cameras. There's a 32 megapixel main shooter, and also an 8 megapixel ultrawide. So if you flip the phone over, that giant camera array should give you sort of a sense of where OnePlus's priorities were with the Nord. So there are 4 cameras there. First, the main sensor, the 48 megapixel one, it's the same as the one that's in the OnePlus 8. There's an 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and 5 megapixel depth sensor. And of course, in typical OnePlus fashion, there's just RAM galore. You can get it either with 8 or 12. Ours has 12, 128 or 256, and it's also packed with a 4115 milliamp hour battery. And no matter what configuration you get, it's gonna be powered by the Qualcomm 765G chip. So we used to make jokes when phones still came with headphone jacks, and I feel like the same thing is appropriate here now with a charger in the box. It comes with one, a warp charger included. There's a pre-installed screen protector. There's a lot of little things in here where OnePlus could have very easily cut corners to save money where they didn't. So no headphone jack here, unfortunately, but OnePlus is happy to sell you their brand newly announced OnePlus Buds. So they're IPX4, you get 30 hours of battery life with the case. USB Type-C to charge them is nice. 10 minutes of charge will give you 10 hours. There's some ambient noise reduction, and they are available for around 80 bucks. But link to all that information down below. So, and if you're looking at the OnePlus Nord, chances are you're cross-shopping with other light competition. You know, the iPhone SE from Apple, Samsung's A line, particularly the A51, or even keeping it in the family with the OnePlus 8, because there's a lot of shared DNA between these two phones. So the screen on the Nord, again, is slightly smaller. It's 6.4 versus 6.5, but it's the same AMOLED 90 hertz tech and also the same resolution. It also has the same main camera. And obviously there are some differences when it comes to processor, the 765 versus the 865 in the OnePlus 8, but the essence of the OnePlus 8 has made its way to the OnePlus Nord. And we liked a lot of things about the OnePlus 8, and I expect to like those same things for less money on the Nord. So perhaps the biggest difference though with the OnePlus 8 versus the Nord is, at least here in the US and North America, we can buy the OnePlus 8. There are, at least right now, no plans to launch the Nord, unfortunately, in North America. Perhaps that'll change, maybe we'll get some spin-off of the Nord here in the US, but if you like to buy your phones from carriers, you're going to be out of luck, at least if you live in North America, for the Nord. Good luck though if you live in parts of Asia or Europe where the Nord will be sold. All right, so let's jump from the 8 to the iPhone SE, and I think this is probably the chief competition for the OnePlus Nord all over the world, and you can start to see the differences between the philosophies for the two companies here. So OnePlus comes out swinging initially. 6.4-inch AMOLED display with a 90 Hz refresh rate, 2 cameras up front, an optical fingerprint reader. So the iPhone SE, it's got a, let's call it tried and true, which is code for it's a dated design. It's the same phone that we saw a couple years ago with the iPhone 8. The Retina LCD, it's good, it's a fine display, but you hold it next to the Nord, it's clearly not even a competition. You've got Touch ID instead of that in-screen fingerprint reader that you've got on the Nord. So the back is kind of a similar story. It's a glass back, but you do get wireless charging, nice to have. You've got a single camera, but with smart HDR built in, is perhaps amongst the best single camera systems that are out there. So what the Nord is lacking in things like wireless charging, it makes up for though in spades with its camera array. Now it is missing perhaps my favorite, telephoto on there, but you do get a sort of rare defined macro lens. You get wide and ultra wide, giving it a lot more versatility on which camera array you want to use. So the one big knock on the iPhone SE is battery life. Its 1,821 mAh battery is abysmally tiny. And you couple that with the power that you get from the A13 Bionic, and you can start to see even more why we wish the SE had better battery life. But the processor, that 13 Bionic, is an absolute beast of a processor. It can handle anything that we throw at it. It's the same processor found in the way more expensive iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max. It's tried and true, and it can do absolutely anything. So the processor on the Nord, if you're going to nitpick, is probably where a lot of people would focus on. So it's got the 765G processor. It's also 5G capable, whereas the iPhone SE is not. The battery in the Nord is also a pretty big beast at over 4,100 milliamp hours. So you take that with the less power hungry 765G chip, and you've got a recipe for a phone that maybe, at least on paper, isn't as powerful, but will easily last you through a full day plus, depending on how you use it. So then there's Samsung's A51, and this one is a no-brainer. This is a single punch knockout. So both have AMOLED displays, similar size panels, but the Nord's got a way higher refresh rate with 90, and that makes the phone itself just look and feel faster before we even talk at all about the processors. So the Exynos 9611, it's a fine-ish processor. For normal stuff, it was all right. It got us where we needed to go. The 765G though just runs laps around the Exynos. It felt faster in every scenario, and both phones have a pretty similar, around 4,000-ish milliamp hour battery. So when it comes to camera, both have actually pretty similar camera arrays. That's gonna be a personal preference, and we'll delve more again into the Nord camera system when we do our full review. So regardless of which phone you want to compare to the Nord, they're all good in their own respect. And I think it kind of begs the question is, if these phones are so good, why do the $1,000 plus phones exist at all? So as much as I would like to say, and I think it's easy to say, that those $1,000 plus phones have no right or reason to exist, I think that would be, quite frankly, disingenuous. I think for phones in this mid-range category to get so good, things have to filter downstream. I don't think it's any coincidence we have the same shooter in the Nord as we had in the OnePlus 8. Higher profit margins let them use that same sensor, for example, on a lower cost device. But also, other form factors and sort of new unique features right now aren't possible on that mid-range price point. And despite the higher end phones getting a lot of the glory and a lot of the innovation happens, it's super refreshing and awesome to see that same level of innovation happening on the mid-range and lower priced phones. So I think the OnePlus Nord kind of represents OnePlus's, let's call it a recommitment to that mid-range price point, getting back into that kind of flagship killer mantra. And it's awesome to see. And this is the direction that OnePlus is heading, where you still have the option to get those flagship phones and still have the option, if you choose, to go for a flagship mid-range phone. That's amazing. That's giving consumers more choice, where they choose to spend their money, what compromises they want to make, and what features they want to have in their pocket. And if that's OnePlus's mission moving forward, that's a mission that I, for one, can absolutely get behind. So before I wrap up, I do want to thank this video sponsor, Motion VFX. They are legit the destination to find hundreds of amazing plugins for Final Cut Pro, Motion, After Effects, and more. They will take your videos absolutely to the next level. In this video, we used a ton of Motion VFX plugins all throughout the video. The camera zoom on the overhead shots was synced to the M-Cam rig, the animating letterbox, part of the really awesome M-Channel Clean collection, and that VCR effect in the intro was appropriately named MVCR plugin. Motion VFX can make pretty much anybody look like a pro editor. Amazing set of tools. Definitely check it out at the link down below.